Grossi Posse Packer Nation, welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom Grossi, and listen, Packer fans, we had it great last week because we didn't lose a game because we were on a bye week, and it was a beautiful thing. And now, like all good things, they must come to an end, and, well, we're facing the best team in football this week, and then taking a trip to New England next week. So, yeah. Gonna be so much fun. I really like our chances, said no one ever. But because of that, we have a Rams fan on this evening. And 4 years ago, when I interviewed my first Rams fan, a very sad conversation in which their team was on the brink of moving to LA. They weren't winning. They were the Rams. But now, to be a Rams fan is to be a fan of the only undefeated team in the NFL thus far. And so with that being said, we introduce LA Rams fan, Derek. Derek, thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
My pleasure. Excited to be here. Hello, everyone from sunny Los Angeles. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, right now, I think everybody in the NFL is jealous of you and your team. You live in a beautiful place. It's like never below 70 degrees, and you're the only undefeated team in football.
72 today.
Oh, man, I think it got up to 60 maybe here, and that was like great. And then tomorrow it'll go back to being as cold as Satan's asshole. So it's
I like to say here in LA we're constantly 1 degree away from perfect.
Yeah. But right now, transition, you guys are perfect when it comes to the LA Rams. Oh, man. ESPN couldn't even do transitions that good. Just take note, everybody. Take note. So let's talk about this season thus far, and then we'll backtrack a little bit. So your fan base right now, there's two teams in LA, and your team by far has got to be the happiest. So for as long as you've been a Rams fan, has there ever been a time where things are like this good, or were you a fan like back in the Kurt Warner, putting up 1 million points, the greatest show on turf kind of era?
Unlike most people now, I was blessed to be a Rams fan from birth. One of my favorite baby pictures is me wearing a Rams onesie sitting on my couch. I was born into it. My dad was a Rams fan growing up. He's been a fan of all LA teams since he was a kid. I think he first fell in love with the Dodgers when he was a kid because he loved the blue and white uniforms. So I've adopted LA sports across the world. I'm actually originally from Northern California, but I've been living down in LA for the last decade. So it's been interesting so far. I remember growing up as a kid watching Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce, Ricky Prohl, Torrey Holt, Marshall Falk, the whole greatest show on turf beat. He who shall not be named, and Jeff Fisher in the Super Bowl. That was one of my earliest NFL memories, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I remember losing to Tom Brady, his first year, and then after that, it was a lot of ups and downs, kind of in the abyss, kind of being relegated into the NFL purgatory of teams suffering anywhere from 2 to 7 wins a season, not anywhere you want to be. And then 2 years ago, obviously the Rams make the move to LA, and it's been interesting to say the least. Going from 10 years, 12 years of literally not knowing any other Rams fans, no one caring about your team, to everyone I know is suddenly a fan of my team. And it's been odd to say the least. And then, we come in first year, we laid a stinker with Jeff Fisher. It was not fun. People were laughing at the Rams. They were laughing talk around town. LA loves its stars. LA loves winners, and the Rams were the antithesis of that for the first 12 months we were here. We were then blessed by the prophet, Sean McVay. He's come in and totally changed everything, and now the city's just on fire. I mean, you've seen it. The city's just lit up with the Rams. Every grocery store you go to, there's Rams apparel everywhere. People all over town rocking Rams stuff. You wouldn't know the Chargers were here at all if you didn't live here.
Yeah, I mean,
it's been surreal.
Yeah, I mean, so you said that it's crazy, like how all of a sudden your team is doing really, really well, and all these fans start popping up, and you're just like, "Hey, Cindy, weren't you wearing a Seahawks jersey last week?" And you're like, "No."
And what's interesting, I mean, it's funny you bring up the Seahawks. there are a lot of people who are still loyal to Pete Carroll, myself included. I love USC. Pete brought a lot of happiness to my life.
Yeah.
And when Pete went up to Seattle, grew a big fan base of Seattle fans down here, mainly because a lot of people didn't like the Niners. They love Pete Carroll, so they just jumped on. I have a good friend who's born and raised here in L.A., and he's a Seattle fan purely because of Pete Carroll. And now how the tide has turned since then. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, and you brought up the fact that, like, the Chargers are there. And you and I were just talking about this before the show even started. They are not talked about. Like, I feel like they are, like, the ugly, like, stepchild of LA right now, because you have, like, the shining beacon that is the LA Rams, and then they're like, oh yeah, the Phillip Rivers is here too, and like, and they're not bad. Like, they're not terrible, right? Like, they're not like
I'd
playing.
say
like,
they're quite good. I think they're a fringe playoff team. Phillip's having quite a year. It's just, a lot of LA sports writers, they often like to put up the hierarchy of LA fan bases with the teams across the city. And generally it always goes, Lakers, Dodgers, 1A, 1B. And then somewhere down the bottom, you'll find, the Ducks, the Clippers, and now the Chargers.
Yeah.
Lower than UCLA, USC. They're kind of relegated to that bottom tier. But they're a fantastic team. I think they have a shot at making the playoffs and making a run.
Yeah, and I feel like we always say that about the Chargers because, like, right, they have the talent when they're healthy. Like, Phillip Rivers is always doing really well in the beginning of the season, and then he forgets how to play football. And then, but, like, you have Melvin Gordon, obviously. You have Keenan Allen, Joey Bosa. They have a team. It's just they're not the team they're not the crown jewel right now.
If I remember correctly, I think even Melvin Gordon came out a while ago and said everywhere he goes, he gets mistaken for Gurley.
And at that point, you're just like, it has to be pretty bad. But at the same time, you're like, oh my God, thank you. Like, I'm so good. Yeah. Like,
unless you have him on your fantasy team, I probably don't know who he is.
Exactly. So you mentioned the move to LA, which I know when I have spoken to, like, St. Louis Rams fans, because I feel like there's a difference now. Like, you had, like, the LA Rams and then you had the St. Louis. So for you, someone who's kind of been, like, encompassed in this LA culture, when they moved from St. Louis to LA, was that something that, like, bothered you, or was that something you were kind of like, yeah, come on down?
I remember the second that I remember exactly where I was when I got the news. I had been preaching this for a year that I thought the Rams were going to move back ever since Stan Kroenke purchased the Hollywood Park Casino grounds, which is now becoming the Inglewood Stadium. When he purchased that, I want to say it was 4 years ago. I was on board right then and there. I thought they were coming back. And I'll never forget, I was in my office working. I was selling solar at the time, and I was working the late shift, and I got the notification. I was doing laps around my office, screaming, cheering. Could not have been happier. I called my dad on the spot. Like, I could not have been more overjoyed that the Rams were coming home. Funny you mentioned the displaced St. Louis fans. Yeah. People seem to forget in this situation that there's a group of LA fans that were displaced 20 years ago when they left here originally. So sorry, St. Louis, I don't really feel bad for you.
You're like, now the tables have turned once again.
They didn't leave you. They came home to us.
Ooh, spicy take. I love it. I love it. And so obviously, you've had kind of this renaissance of the LA Rams, obviously with the addition of Todd Gurley, who was just a monster of a player, who's just like, it's just everything he does is just watching him play is incredible to watch.
I always thought growing up that Adrian Peterson was going to be the best running back that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. He, in my opinion, was just the creme de la creme of all running backs. He could run you over. He could outrun you. He can juke you out of your shoes. But never would I thought I'd see the second coming of Marshall Faulk. Yeah. When I look at Todd Gurley, Gurley may not have the power of Peterson, but if you want to run, right up in the A and B gap 12, 15 times a game and churn out 3 to 5 yards of carry, Gurley can do that with you. He can chew clock all day. He could also run the zone off the edge and get the corner and take it to the house. He can catch it, a swing pass out of the backfield. He can run 25-yard stick and nod routes right in between the safeties and take it to the house. The kid can do it all. Yeah,
and so you obviously built him. You have Aaron Donald, which was a little controversial this past offseason, but you got the deal done, so everybody's happy. Everybody's good.
Yep.
You locked him down. But even before that, like Jared Goff. So if anything in LA was going to work for you guys, you had to get your franchise quarterback. Like that you had to nail that down. And kind of walk me through your feelings when you first drafted Jared Goff, because I felt, if I'm not mistaken, there was a little like hesitation, because when he first started playing, you're like, okay, he's not bad. He's not good. He's just there. Obviously, very different story today, which we'll talk about. But kind of like give me your initial thoughts on Goff.
When I first found out the Rams were trading, I think it was 5 picks at the time to move up to number 1.
Yeah,
I was hesitant because if you remember, a couple years before, we fleeced the Washington Redskins out of half a dozen players for RG3, and I everything that I saw when we made that trade was, oh my God, it's going to happen to us. I'm terrified. Then more and more, I really liked Wentz and Goff coming out. I actually at the time I really loved Carson Wentz. I liked that he was a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. He was older, played in a pro style system in college. Loved Wentz, but either way, I was going to be happy with both. Then of course, first year comes around, and I'll be honest, I was scared. I thought we had a bust on our hands. I would normally, if you come out and tell a number 1 quarterback you're going to sit, no matter what happens, that's fine. But they never really came out and said we're going to sit him and redshirt him. They just said, nope, we'll start him when he's ready. We'll start him when he's ready.
Yeah.
And to me, that sounded like, okay, we just drafted a kid who can't come in here and beat Case Keenum. Yeah. I would expect somebody to be able to beat Case Keenum, beat Austin Davis, and he can't even do that. Who did we just draft?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was kind of my thought process. And then, of course, the first 7 games of his career did nothing but confirm that statement in my own mind. But ever since then, it's been nothing but up. I absolutely love what Goff has turned into and what he's developed into, and I don't think people give him enough credit. He's currently sitting at 2,100 passing yards, 14 touchdowns, 5 picks, 112.7 passer rating on the year, 4th in the league in passing yardage. And in my opinion, everyone loves to talk about Gurley, what he does, what the receiving core does. Without Goff, this offense stagnant.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. No.
Goff is the engine to our Ferrari.
And that's the thing too, is that I'll be honest, like going into this season, like even when last season, so you guys like made the playoffs, right? And, and that was very exciting, but I was like, all right, Jared Goff, I don't really know how much he's going to be able to do, what have you. And then going into this season, I grossly underestimated Goff because, one, I don't think he gets the media coverage that these other quarterbacks get. He doesn't even get the media coverage that Carson Wentz gets, right? Because Wentz
not at all.
Especially last year, Wentz kind of playing out of his mind on an MVP level before he got injured. And then, and then that changes. But watching, what really stood out to me when I get to see LA games every now and then is I was watching the game against the Vikings on Thursday night. Cool. And his accuracy is like scary good. Like the way that he literally just like drops it right in the basket. I was like, he's good.
Super Cup over the 2 defenders. Oh
yeah,
man, what a beauty.
But that's the thing is that you usually have in this case, like you take your like a Peyton Manning in like his late career, like when you have a defense like you do, right? Like it's a high powered defense, a lot of pass rush. You spent a lot of money over the offseason kind of putting in those like random pieces to shore up the backfield, the front 7, etc. You would think that like Goff would be like, okay, kind of hand it off to Gurley, dump off when you can, and that's it. But that's not the case at all when I saw your team. Instead, like you are driving it down the field. Oh, and you also have one of the best running backs in football at the same time. Oh, and you also have this defense. So, like, just kind of watching it all together was terrifying for every other team.
And you're forgetting what, in my opinion, is probably the biggest component outside of Goff and Gurley is our offensive line.
Yeah.
We couldn't do anything without that offensive line. They've been absolutely fantastic. People like to say, well, McVay came in here and he had, the same players as Jeff Fisher, and, it's just because he's a great coach. He came in and retooled the entire offensive line, brought in 3 brand new starters, and it's been night and day. Jarrett hardly ever gets touched. They're the best zone blocking line, which is the perfect fit for Gurley. You watch these guys. I mean, Whitworth at 37 years old is, chipping out the DN and getting up and throwing blocks on corners and safeties, and it's scary. I mean, he's 6'7", like 360 pounds running at you.
Yeah.
These guys are great.
Yeah, and so you kind of touched on this a little bit, because when we're going back to the Vikings game for like the hot second, one of the things that did surprise me though, and I know that there were like you had some injury issues in your backfield, is that, you know, as you are like continuing to be undefeated, your team is obviously going to come under more scrutiny, right? And the question becomes like, when are you going to lose your first game? Because again, being the only undefeated team in football, it's just bound to happen. So
you get a target on your back.
Exactly. So that being said, from your perspective as a fan, you know, where do you see any potential weaknesses in your team right now? Because we're talking about how good the O-line is, how good the pass rush is, how good Jared Goff is, you know, Gurley, etc. You know, if there are any weaknesses in your team, kind of where do you see them?
There are obvious glaring weaknesses in every team. In today's NFL, with a hard salary cap league like we have, you can't build a perfect team. It's impossible, in my opinion. And I think we will lose. And I honestly believe it'll be a good thing when we lose. I think it'll alleviate some of that pressure.
Yeah.
As long as it's not in the playoffs, of course.
Of course.
In terms of weak units on our roster, like I said, I love our O-line, and I think we have some depth. For example, last year, our starting right guard was Jamon Brown, and he was very nice player. He gets suspended before the start of the season, and we replace him with backup Austin Blythe, and he's actually been one of the top, I think, 3 rated guards in all of football by Pro Football Focus. Mm-hmm. That being said, after Jamon and Austin, our 5th and 6th linemen, there's kind of a drop-off, at least an unproven drop-off. It's a lot of rookies. We drafted a Joseph Noteboom out of TCU this year who filled in last week when Whitworth got knocked out, and he was nice for the 1 or 2 drives that he was in there, but again, extremely unproven. And all under that, it's totally unproven. So if we end up going down with some injuries on our line, I think you're going to see some trouble. Jared's going to get hit. Those holes aren't going to be quite as big as they are for Gurley, and it'll disrupt the entire offense. Moving over to the defense, I think our linebacking core has definitely improved their play, but again, very shallow and very unproven behind the starters. And our edge rushing needs to step it up a little bit. Donald and Sue are just absolute game wreckers in the middle, but I don't think any of our edge rushers even have more than 2 sacks this season.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to run into problems if anyone can find a way to exploit that. And we've even seen it just in some of the big fantasy games that we've given up to tight ends. If you remember back in week 1, Jared Cook had a career day.
Yeah.
Some would call it a Rams revenge game. I don't know if you remember, he was on the Rams a while back.
Yep.
But we've struggled in covering the tight end as of recent. So that's another glaring weakness that we have as well.
Yeah, and kind of your team too. I mean, I talked about this all during the offseason. I would say that you guys were by far like one of the favorites in the NFC to go deep into the playoffs, if not the Super Bowl. And at the same time, though, like you also saw kind of like some like articles being written about you being like the Philadelphia Eagles back in the day, like when they assembled the Dream Team, and like
with Nnamdi Asomugha, Michael Vick,
yep, and like it was that idea because you guys made a lot of big offseason, like a lot of offseason moves, right? And you signed like some big names and some big contracts, and so. That being said, while right now things are rock and roll, and I don't mean to put a downer on anything, and it might not be, but do you think that your current team as is sustainable for the long run? As Jared Goff gets even better and eventually gets off his rookie contract, you obviously have, Gurley's a big name contract. Donald just signed a big name contract. Kind of, are you a little concerned that it's going to be like the Broncos from a few years ago where they're like, oh my God, let's sign everybody. Oh, yay, we won a Super Bowl and we're done. Obviously you have the youth on your side and you locked in, I think, like those major franchise players that you need. But is there that like kind of lingering concern, or is it like, listen, we're 7-0, like we're just going to keep on rocking until the wheels fall off?
There's always concern. Whenever you sign anyone to a lengthy contract, I mean, you can step out your front door, get hit by a bus today, and never be able to play football again. So there's always that concern. But when you look at what the Rams did specifically, they threw out a lot of big numbers, so a lot of big names. But 2 things really stood out to me this summer as we were going through and negotiating all these contracts. Yes, Donald got his big extension. Mm-hmm. However, it's very middle-loaded in the sense that we didn't have to pay him $40 million this year. I think we're paying him 20 and change. But it's right in the middle, smack right before Todd Gurley's contract inflates and before Jared Goff's contract's going to inflate. So his contract will be team-friendly once we get into the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
Second, Gurley's contract that he signed was actually an extension that won't even come into play until 2 more years. So we get 2 more years of Gurley on his rookie contract before we start paying him the big numbers. Now our free agent acquisitions that we brought in, Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib, and Ndamukong Suh. Suh, we're paying him $17 million for 1 year. He's off the books at the end of this year. Peters is still on his rookie deal, which is a late first-round rookie deal. I think we're paying him less than $5 million this year, and we have him locked up for 2 more years. And Talib, another 1-year contract. I believe we're paying him somewhere around 12.5. So we actually next year, I believe, I want to say we have $35, almost $40 million in cap space next year to play with, and even more the following year. Yes, we have to sign up. We have to lock down Goff for the long-term future. But where we sit right now, I'm really not worried about being hamstringed. And all the players that we signed are either on rookie. I mean, I think Suh and Talib are the only what you would call veteran players that we did bring in, and they're both on team-friendly 1-year deals.
Yeah. So like for the most part, you're like, yeah, we're pretty good. Like, you know, because again, I think what you guys did.
I think
you did it through the draft. You know what I mean? Like you got your major stars through the draft. You got guys like Brandon Cooks and stuff like that. Like, you know, these off pieces. And I think you obviously spent more money on the defense, but it's like those 1-year deals. And it's like, hey, if it works out, cool. If we have the cap space, we'll sign them, but we'll lock down Goff. We'll get him for, you know, however many years to be our franchise QB.
That'll be a scary one. Yeah. We're going to have to probably throw out a 6-year, $160 million contract to lock him down somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I know all about big quarterback contracts.
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, I bet you do.
But in that case, so your team is obviously firing on all cylinders right now. You have your eyes, like the NFC West itself is a shell of what it once was. You know, the 49ers, they don't have their quarterbacks. The Seahawks, they're just inconsistent, and then the Cardinals, they're the Cardinals.
Who knows them?
Yeah, they're
slowly fading into the Browns of the NFL.
Yeah, it's just bad. It smells real bad. Even the Browns are like, oh, we're not the Cardinals. So that being said, out of the NFC, which is I would argue, much more competitive conference than the AFC, I
would agree.
What teams do you look at in the NFC that kind of give you some pause that you're like, oh, they could cause us some trouble?
Right off the top of my head, I would say the Saints. The way they run the ball is we don't have the greatest run defense. Like I mentioned earlier, our linebackers can be a little inconsistent or untested, so they scare me right off the bat. The Vikings defense, I know we already played them, but they're someone we could definitely see in December. They are starting to play like the Vikings of last year, and with much improved quarterback play, they scare me. I think what Norv Turner has done with Cam Newton this year, he's really kind of flipped the script on Cam, and he looks far more accurate and composed in the pocket than he has in his entire career, and they are starting to really turn it up a notch. Another team we could see in the playoffs. And, of course, you can never doubt Aaron over in Green Bay. I'm not looking forward to seeing Rodgers have the ball in his hands late in the fourth quarter, down by less than a touchdown. That will always terrify me. I don't care what the rest of your guys' roster looks like. That is, in my opinion, the scariest man in the NFC.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, Packer fans as a whole right now, like, I feel like our confidence level is kind of low considering, you know, like, we have injuries, obviously. You know, everyone was back practicing this week, which is good. But we had injuries. We had a very, very, very close game with the 49ers, which so bad. So bad. But, like, we're coming out of the bye, and the rest of the season does not get any easier for us. Obviously facing you, then going to the Patriots, and we have the Seahawks on a short week, you know, after the Dolphins, and then we get the Vikings and it's not getting easier. But that being said, I feel like the consensus is the Packers are going to come out, and one of two things is going to happen. Either one, we're going to get blown the F out, and it's going to be ugly. Or two, we're going to really, really impress and then still fall short. There's like a third option where we wind up winning, but it's low. It's low right now. But like you said,
I wouldn't put it past you guys to come out very slow in the first half, go down by 17, maybe 21.
Shocker.
And then Rodgers does what Rodgers does and comes storming back. I mean, I've seen it a million times. I'm never going to put it past the man.
Yeah, and this season that's kind of been the tale in that like our defense is atrocious in the first half, like letting up 20 points, and then Rodgers is like, "God damn it, guys! Like again, fine."
Again.
And then he's like, "All right, fine. Like I'll go win the game." Or in a sense with like the Redskins game or the Lions game, like it's too much, and that's what concerns me about you guys is that you have that high-powered offense that you guys could put up like 30 points in the first half and then let off the gas, and Rodgers could start making his comeback, but at that point, it's kind of too little too late. And so, that being said, like, what do you see happening this Sunday? You know, what are you looking for in which will arguably be like the best game of the week?
I personally am looking for what is our defense doing? Is our defense getting off the ball? Are they playing aggressive? Or are they kind of sitting back on their heels and trying to see what Rodgers is going to do? One thing that I absolutely love about Sean McVay is he preaches absolute aggressiveness. His nature is totally aggressive. You'll never see him just trying to run out the clock at the end of the game. He wants to stomp on your throat. So I want to see our defense come out firing, hitting, and locking down Devontae Adams from the get-go. We've had a little bit of an injury bug with Marcus Peters, so hopefully he'll come out a little bit more on the healthy side than he's been and can be more of that lockdown corner that we anticipate him. He's been fine this year. Him and Talib got off to a great start at the beginning of the season, but this injury kind of lingered with him for a while. So I'm hoping he can come out and avoid giving up that big play to Devontae like he's been doing the last couple of weeks. And then, of course, how's our offensive line playing? Are we able to open up holes for Gurley? Are we able to protect Jared? If we can do those two things, I feel more than confident that we'll be able to come away with the win.
Yeah, I'm concerned about what our defense is going to do. I'm very, very, very concerned considering like the 49ers ran all over us. Yeah,
maybe you guys go out and get Patrick Peterson here in the next day or two. That would terrify me.
Yeah, oh, that'd be great. That would be wonderful. Yeah, I don't know, but again,
though I do like Kevin King, that kid from Iowa. I like him out of the draft.
Yeah, I like Kevin King as well, and I think he's starting to emerge into like a really good player. He's obviously been dealing with an injury as well, but like the fact that if we have Jair Alexander back, you know, that's going to help the backfield a lot. Anytime that Kentrell Bryce like doesn't really get a lot of action is a good thing for us. I'm very happy if he never has to go near a ball, that'd be a good thing. But like our pass rush, we need to make Goff uncomfortable, and we definitely need to shore up and huddle the box because Gurley will run all over us like Breida did, against us the Monday night.
I think I was playing against him in fantasy that week, and it wasn't fun.
Yeah, no, it wasn't good. We were playing against him, and it wasn't fun. So yeah, it was no bueno. So looking past Sunday, obviously you guys are doing really, really well. How do you see this season unfolding? Well, of course, everybody wants to win a Super Bowl. Is there any like kind of games remaining on the schedule that you're like, okay, here's where our first loss could come in? You know, do you see yourselves locking up home field advantage? You know, where is the rest of the season taking you?
I think the number one goal obviously has to just be the next game. You got to go out and you cannot look past anyone. But in terms of potential losses, the one that glares out to me more than any is Monday night against Kansas City in Mexico City. Obviously, Pat Mahomes looks just like the second coming of Rodgers out there today. So far this year, he's been amazing, absolutely lighting it up. But just the playing on a Monday night, playing in a foreign country, playing at a higher altitude. A lot of people forget Mexico City is quite at a high altitude. Maybe not quite as high as Denver, but it's not like playing down here at sea level. So that's going to be an adjustment. So there's a lot of variables that go into playing on a Monday night. And whenever you have a high-powered offense like Mahomes, Hill, Kareem Hunt, Sammy Watkins, and Kelsey, they're going to be a tough one to stop. So that's going to be that could shape up to be game of the year. But that's the one that stands out to me more than any moving forward.
Yeah, and I think you guys will obviously we'll see you in the playoffs. Hopefully the Packers will be there too. But we'll see you in the playoffs. And kind of moving forward, I want to say like. Looking at currently like the state of the NFC, you obviously have like the NFC South, and I think you mentioned the Saints, right? You have the Vikings, you have the Packers. The NFC East is the NFC East. I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned with them really at all.
I don't think anyone's concerned with the NFC East.
No. So like you have like those top like 4-ish teams. I think you mentioned the Panthers as well. And that's really it. Like those are like the major contenders. So if you're a Rams fan, I mean things got to be looking, obviously not getting ahead of ourselves, but things are looking pretty good for the rest of the season.
Yes. I don't think there's anyone that we can't hang with and beat in the NFC. What I would really like, I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch. What I would love to see happen this year is for Brady's career to come full circle, play the Rams in the Super Bowl, and then us get revenge on Brady 20 years later. That would be just poetic in my mind.
That would be a beautiful thing. Listen, if it comes down to you and the Patriots, I promise you I will be rooting for you. I think 99% of America will also be rooting for you. The 1% will just be New England, because who wants Tom Brady to have 6 Super Bowl rings? Like, enough. We're done. Keep it to one hand, and that's it.
Right.
But exactly. But Derek, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing some insight, and I want to wish you luck on the rest of the season. Just not on Sunday.
Thank you for having me, man. It was a pleasure. Anytime I can talk Rams football is always a good day. Hopefully, if anything, obviously there's only be one winner this week. Hopefully both teams walk away healthy. I don't like to see anyone get hurt on Sundays, but best of luck. I hope the Rams come away with the victory. And, man, go select for the rest of your season.
Absolutely. Thank you. So will the Packers be able to pull off the upset and beat the undefeated Rams and give them their first loss? I would say the realist in me would say no, but I'm a Packers fan, damn it. I don't know what reality is, so we're going to win. Maybe. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com, TomGrossi Comedy, or Tom Grossi Comedy on the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also Patreon. Also, pick out your own copy of Allergic to Fun, my debut comedy album. Hard copies at TomGrossiComedy.com or digital versions on iTunes and Amazon. You can also find podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, and of course here on the YouTubes. We release content several times a week, but I want to thank you all so much for watching. Should be a great game on Sunday, either way. I just hope for a really, really good game. I really hope we don't get blown out. If we blow them out, that'd be great. But let's just not get blown out. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.